What is going on out there, lacrosse fans and sports bettors alike? Welcome on in. Another rousing rendition here of Bet On Lacrosse. We're not only aiming to cash those tickets, we're aiming to make you better bettors each and every week. We're still waiting on some people to hop in here on our live edition, but if you're listening to this on the replay, we got the boys back in town. I'll admit, I'm missing my guy JB. I'm missing my guy Brian Andrews, but if to bring back the PB to my jelly, to bring him back, if we had to kick those two guys off the show for this week, so be it, Hutton. Because we are welcoming back my guy. I haven't done a show with him in too long. Parker Blake back on the show, Pro Lacrosse Talk, and co-creator of the PLL Betting Report. He's also the cruncher on the machine as well. We got Hutton Jackson with us as well. But PB, man, that beard is looking strong, and it's good to be back with you. How's it going, brother?
Hey, it's going great, man. Like you said, it's been way too long since I've been on here. I mean, who else is going to have anybody rooting for unders but me? Everyone hates unders, but, that's what I'm here for. And don't forget that 2.5.
Unders and dogs. Unders and dogs. Yeah, that's a man after my own heart. I mean, unders, I've actually been – you and Brian Andrews are the sole reason that brought me around on unders. I used to be like, I can't play these unders. They stress me out too much. And you opened up my eyes to the world that is betting unders. And it might even be more fun than betting overs because you also get to brag when things do go under and everybody else is like, we were all the points. Well, you probably should have handicapped it just a little better. But let's also welcome in our guy, Hutton Jackson, Action Network producer, also the host of Pro Lacrosse Talk. Hutton, I think it was a pretty good week one in the PLL for all of us. Some of us had such a damn good weekend. They might even be limited on different sports books, but this is the game that we play, I suppose. Hutton, what's going on, man?
I'm doing well, and I know it's been a while for you to be joined by Parker, but I had the pleasure of being with Parker on Monday for PLT Live Twitter Spaces. Parker is putting in work this week. He is making appearances on PLT, BOL, and we're reviving the Fantasy Lacrosse Podcast with Parker as one of the guys at the helm of that. So you guys can tune into that. That will come out later this week before the games. So shout out to Parker for putting in the work this week. And I'm glad Parker kind of talked about the underdogs and, taking the unders in games, underdogs 2.5. Because I was doing this video for Action about like MLB betting, and it's just amazing like how people don't really think about, betting plus money plays can really set you up in the future, even if you're still historically going below 50%. I did a video, and I feel like we're kind of at the cusp of that with lacrosse now, but they have data going all the way back to 2005. And if you were to take favorites since 2005, you'd hit at a 53% rate, but you'd be down 300 units. Whereas if you were betting underdogs, you'd be only going 43%, but you'd be up 200 units. So that just shows kind of, again, like it's not always picking the winner. It's also, good bankroll management, knowing when to play the plus money plays and stuff. And in a league like the PLL where the parity is at its highest, just important to know. So I'm glad I think Parker's strategy has a lot of credence to it. And I'm happy to have him share a little bit more of that today.
Hey, I've always joked that I've always been a plus money bettor because I'm a bad bettor, but I'm plus on the overall units. So I can't complain too much.
No, and I'm right there with you, man. Like I always am the one who's the contrarian. I'm always the one who's making the case because you just set yourself up for long-term success. Not if you're always taking dogs. Like the reason why they're underdogs is because the implied probability is lower. However, if you're able to really dissect and pick good spots for plus money plays, Hutton just nailed it. And he had the numbers to back it up. Sure, it's a different sport, but we say all the time, use different sporting, axioms and ways that you attack handicapping games in lacrosse. And because it's such a virgin market, you're going to set yourself up for success. So I'm not saying, anytime you see a crazy plus money play, but go and sprinkle on it. But, if you had the balls to take Chrome this past week, getting the 2.5 and sprinkle a little bit on the money line, that closed at a plus 190 take back. So, you get, let's say you're a $10 bettor, you get 19 back on that $10 that you bet. And that 9 could have covered you if you had a play that you maybe laid 110 on. So now you're only down, 0.2 units. You're only down $2 as opposed to being down, massive, because all you're trying to do is keep laying the juice. And, the odds makers must know something. I'm right there with you guys that you have to be judicial in the way that you're picking these games. And I think, Hutton, sure, it was a baseball stat that you were laying out, but I think you kind of touched upon it there, that especially in a newer market, using some of these, while there isn't the giant database and the giant, data pool to draw from, using some of these other strategies have proved really successful for us. I'm not saying we're millionaires betting this stuff, but it just, we've started to learn that there isn't just one simple way. There's no cookie cutter handicapping method. You have to really figure what works for you and your bankroll. And I think you're kind of coming around that, finding some of these dog spots is maybe one of the most advantageous ways to bolster your bankroll. Am I right in kind of on, taking that away from what you were saying?
No, absolutely. And, I think night and day from last year to this year, I credit you and Doug a lot from kind of teaching me side of betting. And now I feel like I'm pretty experienced in it because, last year I wasn't really worried about how much I was laying. And, now these days, if I'm laying more than 130, it's tough for me to do. Usually I just pass. And I think that's the other thing, just knowing when, you don't have to play either side sometimes. Just knowing when to pass on games and stuff. We say that all the time on here. We'll have some leans here and then, but most time, we're not worried about saying we're passing on the game because it's hard to read. But yeah, I think you brought up a good point. And even though the data still on lacrosse isn't there yet, our guys Parker and Brian are putting in a lot of work with this Bet on Lacrosse report. So reach out to us if you're interested in checking that out. And we're kind of building that database. We already have a lot of data from last year that shows that taking underdogs against the spread has been profitable. Even taking underdogs, straight up, it was almost at a 50%. And if you're betting those underdogs, obviously, you mentioned the Chrome being plus 190, you're going to get plus money plays. So even though going at 50%, you're going to be profitable. So definitely reach out if you're interested in that. And I can't say enough about the work they have done so far this past 2 years.
Yeah, we've already added several folks who have reached out to us to get in on that betting report. So, I completely echo those sentiments. These guys, we wouldn't feel as confident about some of these plays without it. So on today's episode, we're going to break down all 4 games. And as Hutton said, a lot of leans. I don't know about you guys, and we'll get into it once we get into the PLL. We're actually going to lead with the NLL as it is the NLL Finals Game 2 preview. Hutton has a play and one that I backed up on as well. But I didn't love the PLL board this week. Nothing really jumped off the board that oh my God, you have to bet this, though. The further I dissected it and maybe looked at some spots, you'll probably notice a lot of contrarianism coming out of the microphone for me. So we'll get into that, but let's just start real quick and we'll get in and get out because we're both looking the same way in this. Bandits win game 1. I mean, betting the NLL has been next to impossible for me because it's so damn competitive, but the games are so entertaining. If you're a lacrosse fan and you're not throwing this on, you're doing yourself a disservice because the stars are showing out. They did in game 1 against the Bandits and the Mammoth. And while the Bandits did get home, they still, are struggling to cover some of these games. So Mammoth Bandits, the spread in this one is 1.5. And I neglected. I didn't grab the total before we hopped on here. But Hutton, how are you breaking this game down? And do you see value either way? I mean, since the games have been so close, does this just play towards the dog or how are you going to attack this NLL Finals? Because how I'm going to attack it is just roll with whatever you're picking, kick my feet up with a little pizza money, and hopefully pay for that pizza money while watching this game.
Yeah, so I've benefited from taking the underdogs against the spread against the Bandits, despite them winning the past in their Toronto series. I took Toronto plus 1.5 both times, and it both paid off. Toronto nearly won those games outright. And then I took the other side. I took the Bandits minus 1.5 this last game. The Mammoth covered. So very, recency bias here, but the Bandits have failed to cover the minus 1.5 the past 3 games. They're still squeaking out these wins. And that's not to say, they won't actually win by more than 1 this time around and win the championship. But I do like the Mammoth at home, getting the plus 1.5. I think they've proven they can hang with the Bandits this past game. I think they're, have some home field advantage too, home floor advantage being in Colorado as well. So I think that's kind of what made me lean that way. And then you can still get a plus 105 on BetMGM. So I think that's like where, for me, it was when DraftKings came out and it was minus 130. It was just a lean. It was kind of like a stay away. But again, plus money, you want to, again, limit your risk a little bit there. So, bet $10 on it, you're taking back $10.50. So for full disclosure, I actually have, I got to Bandits future way later than I should have, but I did eventually get in at minus 105. So I have that kind of riding. So I'm going to do a half unit on the I'm going to do a half unit on the Mammoth plus 1.5. It would be a full unit play for me, but I just don't want to lose all my Bandits money if the Bandits do, perchance win by more than one, and end up winning this NLL Finals. So kind of hedging a little bit there, but if they do only win by one, I win both bets. If they end up losing outright, I get a little bit, and then I can still let that ride in game 3. So that's kind of how I'm playing it. But as a given out a play, I like a full unit at plus 105 on BetMGM for the Mammoth plus 1.5. I think they could get the win. So you might even want to sprinkle on the money line. But in terms of this Bandits team, just looks really, really good. So I think just even taking the points is a good play.
Yeah, it doesn't take me much. It's, like I said, not only am I getting points, I'm getting plus 105. So that's my pizza money bet. I'm right there with you. I'll be kicking my feet back with a cold snack and enjoying this one, Hutton. So I can't wait for that one. Great weekend of lacrosse coming up here. So looking forward to that game right there. So, man, if you want to put on the tinfoil hat, NLL definitely wants a game 3 because then, they get revenue, they get ticket sales, they get everything. PLL wants this to end. They want it to be a blowout win so they can get all their stars back in the league. But there's definite ways, to maybe attack that either way. But plus 1.5, plus 105 Mammoth. That's one of the best bets that we have here for you, in the NLL Finals. Guys, let's get to the PLL. Full slate, another 4 games. These ones going down in Charlotte. So love to see that. Different spots here for all these games. Love the tour model that they're doing up. Would love to get down there in Charlotte, but will not be making it this weekend. I will be betting on it, however. And Hutton, I'm actually going to throw it right back your way because the day we saw the injury report come out, I think the PLL heard some of the feedback from last season about maybe the frustrations with people betting on these games. We want an injury report and we want it earlier in the week. So they've been doing a pretty good job of making sure it's only week 2, but Wednesday last week, we knew who was going to be out, who was doubtful. We know that now too. And I think some decent betting implications with some of these injuries. And I'll throw it your way for just that kind of overview of that update before we get into these spreads and totals.
Yeah, shout out to the PLL. They have an injuries page now on their website. I believe it's premierlacrosseleague.com/injuries. So pretty straightforward there. They've been updating that. They put out the graphic. I believe it's Wednesday, Friday they're updating it. So you get to know kind of early in the week kind of when these lines are coming out. And then, right before game time, you'll kind of find out too. So I think the notable ones are Grant Ament is still injured. He's doubtful. So it doesn't look like he's going to play. And they're playing a Chaos team that has kind of had their number, even with Grant Ament. And then John Sexton's out again. That kind of was evident, that his loss was kind of evident, I think, in last week's game. Again, they were playing the Atlas, so no small feat there. But Perkovic is also doubtful. So not looking great for the Redwoods. Rob Pennell did not show up on the injury report, so that's good. He ended up returning to that game. Still didn't look 100%, so got to monitor to see how he ends up doing this game. But yeah, those are like the big ones. Another one that's kind of sneaking under the radar and it kind of affected the Water Dogs in week 1, too, is their captain, Steve Napoli, short stick defensive midi. He's probably their best short stick on the team. Zach Courier is also a two-way guy, but, he needs some rest here and there at some point. So wouldn't be surprised if maybe Jake Higgins, the Maryland short stick defensive midi, he was like their number 2, number 3 guy with Bubba Fairman on Maryland this year. Maybe he makes his appearance in the lineup, but that worries me a little bit for the Water Dogs, just the fact that they don't really have a go-to short stick defensive midi. And we've seen teams like the Chrome, like the Atlas, that have, the Whip Snakes. They have 2 to 3 guys that can lock you down with a short stick, and it makes it really hard on the offenses. And, we had a good discussion on PLT earlier on Monday. Charlie White brought up how that's kind of been the X factor for a lot of these teams. So those are the big takeaways for me for the injury report and how it affects betting.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right there. And let's roll right on into this PLL slate. We had, just to recap what we saw in week one, 3 out of the 4, the dogs were barking. It was Parker and I's week. 3 out of the 4 dogs cover. 2 of them win outright. That was Chrome and Cannons. Chrome were getting that beautiful 2.5. The free money continues cashing with that spread. And we see it again, though I will say, if you're back in the 2.5 this week, you may need some antacid on that one of our antacid specials here on Bet on Lacrosse. The totals kind of split 2-2 to the over, to the under, but the prop that was put up by Barstool Sports, which was just such a fun one, the Rabel, which was 97.5 total goals over under, that cashed pretty comfortably. I think it was 92 total goals that we saw. I had my abacus all weekend long, putting one to the side, and thank God the under came through, because the statistics said the under. A betting axiom that leagues usually start lower scoring said play the under. If you added up all the totals, you were still looking at an under with the hook. So, all of it was saying the under. Glad that actually gets home as well. So I was happy about that right there. I just think that's exciting. You know what I mean? Like getting those kind of like just prop bets. I said to you, and we were going back and forth on Twitter about this, Hutton, is a bet like that is great because you get to put one unit or whatever you want to bet on it, and you automatically have action on every single game without doing a 4-leg parlay that by the end of the first game, once everybody thought the Whip Snakes were going to be rolling, they don't end up covering that game, and guess what? Your parlay is already dead. So it was a great way to get action on every game, and it was even better since the squad all went on the under. Of course, the Bet on Lacrosse guys went on the under. We were the one team that in the championship last year, do you remember that, Hutton? And PB, when everybody was saying, there's going to be so many goals scored, this is going to be amazing. And we were like, no, this game is going under. And it got sweaty, but that game stayed under. So a shocker, Hutton, that in week one, there was a prop for all the goals, and we cashed an under on it.
Yeah, I know. And that last year one, hit a pipe and went like to the midline off the pipe. The pipe heard around the world. And we were in the press box. I was in the press box for that too. And it was just, it was crazy to witness live and just sweating that one out. But and I think what was interesting too, takeaway from this week is I feel like a lot of games started out fast and then the defense kind of gets settled. And that's the one thing about the PLL that is a little bit different of viewing experience than in college is, the fact that they're 48-minute games. I felt like these games, they started out like a lot of them. Obviously, the Atlas Redwoods was destined to go over, but one like the Cannons, it did end up going over like I predicted, but it was a much sweatier over than I thought it would be because they got out hot, started scoring, and then it slowed down. And I think that was the story for all these games. I mean, the Chrome was another one that I bet under, and I was worried about that, the first quarter, second quarter, and that ended up being very comfortably under the total. So that's I think kind of one of my takeaways is I hope we start to get first half unders or first half overs and some live betting soon because I think it'll be really interesting. I don't want to blindly play it, but if we start getting live betting, I'm going to heavily consider taking some live unders going into the second half because it just seems to play that teams start out fast and once these defense get settled, and maybe that's just a week one thing. We'll have to monitor that, but it really did seem like teams really slowed down the pace as the games went along, and a lot of these over-unders ended up being closer than they maybe seemed at first.
Bro, I'll tell you what, if they started having some of those micro markets of team totals and first half unders and things like that, I'm pulling all my money out of the bank. And I am full-time going on to solely handicapping lacrosse. I mean, that's basically what I do now anyways. But I have a little bit of work that I sprinkle in every now and then. So, guys, let's get into this week, some actionable info for our listeners here on Bet on Lacrosse. Chrome Redwoods 1.5-point favorites. Was a little surprised to see them favored out of the gate, especially with what we saw from Chrome last week, but definitely the bookmakers not overreacting to week one. Total in this one, 23.5. And Parker, I'm going to throw it your way because we brought you back on here, and I feel like it's just been Hutton and I doing the two-man game like we're Lyle Thompson and Asher Knowlting. So we got to bring you in, PB. And what are you thinking as we got this Redwoods and Chrome game coming up?
Well, first off, I think we just need to address the fact that the league set the pace for the under all season with that prop. I think that's what we got to take away from there.
Yeah, I love it. It's under season for you, my man.
Under season. No, in this Redwoods game, I feel like everyone's down on the Woods. And I don't know, I feel biased. I try not to touch Redwoods games if I don't have to, because I do like the Woods. But I just don't see, I mean, as ugly as we looked last week, I don't see how they come out and lose to the Chrome. Maybe I'm just still stuck on how bad the Chrome played last year, but I just think that Redwoods can pick apart their defense and get in there. So I got Woods money line for sure.
Yeah, and
the
Chrome,
machine has it at 60%, so I'm not going to shy away from that either.
yeah, and Chrome in week 1 was one of my favorite plays just because of the spot. Like, I think that maybe we played down a little bit. And I don't think they lost because Grant Ament wasn't in the game, but you definitely saw like there was like a moment where the Archers were just kind of like looking around. You know what I mean? Where it was like they were just looking for that little spark to kind of vault them back in. And in the second half, that spark did end up coming, but it was just too much of a hole that they got in early when they were like doing the whole, palms up. Oh shit. Where's Ament throwing me a perfect pass across the middle while I'm wide open because they have to cover our whole entire offense. So I think that, they were lacking from that, but I also think this spot just sets up for the Redwoods. I'm a major like situational bettor in that aspect. And I too, I wouldn't put the spread into account in this one because I think it could end up being, another 1-goal game. I already have a Chrome ticket in my pocket just because I think that line could have potentially moved. We haven't seen it do it yet, but I still think that there's a chance for that to happen on the day of the game that people come sweeping in. I would lean Redwoods money line, but I'm not touching it at minus 160. I have a best bet coming from this game on a player prop that I'll be giving at the end of the episode, but yeah, I just can't lay 160 until that juice comes down. This is a stay away game, and I'll just keep the Chrome plus 1.5 in my pocket. Hutton, I think you have the same bet because we were going back and forth about that on Twitter. Is that the way that you're attacking it? Probably not adding anything else to your card from this one?
Yeah, I took it early too, just a half unit because I thought the line was going to be move after it opened up at minus 110. I took Chrome plus 1.5. Ended up getting better on BetMGM at minus 1.5 or minus 105 for plus 1.5. But I actually, even though I'm not going to like double down on the Chrome, I'm going to leave it just at that half unit. I do like them in this game, especially with Perkovic out, especially with Sexton still out. What worries me. What I think could be the Chrome's Achilles heel in this game is TD Earl at the face-off. I think he really has a chance to dominate Connor Farrell. So in hand, the Redwoods could get a lot more possessions. But I also think the youth of this Chrome offense, they're a good team. Like top to bottom, the Chrome have a lot of key pieces now, and I think they're going to be a good team. And I'm going to back them as underdogs a lot this year. But the face-off stripe still worries me a little bit. It was a favorable matchup for Farrell last week. And just their inexperience, I could see this Redwoods defense giving this offense some trouble. So whereas I think the Redwoods offense is going to have some trouble with his defense because I think his defense is much improved. Tarafanko, Will Haas are, Tarafanko's been healthy, but Haas is healthy. Mike Messenger played really well at short stick defensive mid. He even added a little bit in transition. Sean Scanoni's looking great in cage. So that kind of like makes me think, okay, maybe this could lean like under right now. Still not bold enough to bet it just because I feel like on one side it could be a slugfest between Redwoods offense and Chrome defense. And then on the other side, you could see, it's very, very up in the air. The Redwoods defense could play as bad as they did last week, or they could really stuff the Chrome and take it to them. I don't know. I just don't know how to play it. So that's why I'm going to keep it at the half unit on Chrome plus 1.5, but I do think they're live to win this game. So if you like what you saw last week, I think that's not a fluke. I think that's the real deal. My only really concern is that I just don't think they have an option. I don't think if Farrell can go 50% with TD or around that, I think Chrome have a great chance to win this game and definitely cover. But if, Farrell comes out and it's a little bit, domination by TD, that's when I think you can get into some trouble for the Chrome. So like the half unit on Chrome plus 1.5. Definitely too much juice to take Redwoods on the money line. And, I just don't trust them laying a goal and a half either.
So we'll roll right into this Atlas and Cannons game. It's the 2.5, the line that we have loved just so much. Total in this one, 24.5. I think this is going to be another stay away from me. What we saw last week from the Atlas, that's why this would be hey, just give me the 2.5 and let me kick my feet up because it's been such a profitable endeavor. And I'm going to throw the mic over to Parker in just a second so he can really quantify just how profitable of endeavor that's been. I also lean over in this game, but what kind of scares me is the odds makers throwing this up 24.5, which is a high total for PLL given, but this was the number 1 and number 2 team with Atlas and Cannons in scoring respectively last week. So, both of these teams just had a major scoring output and now they just throw up, here's your highest total of the week. It just seems like a little bit of a bait job to me to that over, though I still think if I were to make a bet in this game, I think probably the over is the best way to attack it. So just 2 leans for me. I lean laying the 2.5, but I just can't buck what has been an awesome trend. And PB, I'll throw it your way to talk about that kind of trend that we've just really been cashing in like crazy.
No, I was just going through and I just realized I hadn't put together anything about the 2.5 and scrambling to find something because I pulled up this Cannons teams just on the betting report so I could argue with Hutton here because
that's well done. Well, I can tell you it's like 78%, something like that, 7-2 against the spread run for 2.5 dogs. And out of those instances, there's been dogs that have won that outright. So it's just been a great move. But I'll throw the mic your way and you guys can just argue over how you're viewing this because I know you like Cannons, Hutton likes Atlas. Ding, ding, ding. Put the boxing gloves on.
Well, overall, since we started tracking just kind of the betting trends and where stuff's landing, we're sitting 70% on the plus spread just overall. So that alone already pushes me that way. But then I look back at the history and, the Cannons love to cover. I was not aware of how much the Cannons love to cover. And, when they're sitting at 2, the only game they've ever got at 2.5 they covered. And sitting at 1.5, they covered 5 games. So just out the gate right there, we're already sitting pretty with the plus 2.5 and the fact that it is the plus 2.5, which likes to hit anyway. So, we'll start there, Hutton. What do you think? And then at the same time, if you want the numbers to it, the Cannons have covered their spread just overall 64% of the time. So I'm liking the Cannons.
Normally, I love the plus 2.5. But I'm going to have to disagree with you. I'm going to throw the numbers out because what I saw from the Atlas last week was the most performance since the Whip Snakes in 2020. That was a different environment. They were in the bubble, whatever have you. But I don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction that they're now laying 2.5 against this Cannons team. And honestly, we haven't seen a 3.5 in the PLL yet. But it's interesting that they're still drawing the 2.5, even though the Cannons had a pretty decent win against the Water Dogs. But I think if you watch those games, despite both teams winning by 6, the Atlas looked way more complete against the Redwoods than the Cannons did against the Water Dogs. Water Dogs actually won that second half. Now, tough to bet against Lyle Thompson, but I think the key areas where I really like the Atlas is Atlas have too many weapons on the field. And in this league, you have to have 2 strong short stick defensive middies. You could argue that the Cannons have the best short defensive midi in the league in Zach Goodrich. He is that good. But after that, Bubba Fairman's still on the injury report. Tyson Bell, love him in the NLL, plays a little too over-aggressive, draws penalties. You put this Atlas team on the power play, they're going to pick you apart. Eric Law has been had a great debut to the season. He's just so complimentary to these 2 quarterbacks of Chris Gray and Jeff Teed. I know that's what everyone says. We said it on PLT. We harp on it. Everyone harps on that. But it's so true that you just have so many weapons on the field. Who knows? Maybe we get Romar Dennis suiting up this week too. You got Brian Costabile. I just think this is too much for this Cannons defense that hopefully they'll have Brody Merrill as the field general back, but I don't think that gives that defense too much of an upgrade. Just nice to have a leader of your defense back. Not too sold on a lot of these, polls like Keelty's great, Pulver's great, but they don't really have a true LSM. Hooper played well last week, but I just don't feel so strongly about this Cannons team. And I think ultimately they might be losing the possession battle if Trevor Baptiste goes off again, because Stephen Kelly hasn't historically done well against Trevor Baptiste. They do have Alex Woodall on the roster, who didn't play last week, but he's gone toe-to-toe with Baptiste, I believe, in the past when they played in college. If not, I think he does have the ability to hang with him a little bit, but Baptiste just looks so good. So I like the over in this game, and I'm laying the 2.5 with Atlas. I just really like this Atlas team, and I think, teams will start to figure them out as season progresses. Like that happens in every PLL season. The Whipsnakes had the advantage that they only had to play really 5 games and then won the championship. But I do think the Atlas are going to cause a lot of trouble the next couple weeks, and it's going to take some time for teams to really figure out how to beat them.
No, I did a lot of looking into the Cannons defense just because I did see a lot of people talking about how the Atlas were just going to pick them apart. And I'm like, it can't be that bad. And I will say the most interesting thing I found, because I do think this is going to be a big possession game. It's just going to be whoever has the ball last. I feel like, it's going to be a 1-point game. That spread is money, but that's just me. But Baptiste is going to win at the stripe. I think we all know that. But Pulver was the league leader in caused turnovers last season, and then the Atlas had, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 players who led the league in turnovers, lost. So that was just an interesting stat that I found, and while I was doing my research for Player Royale this week, I was just like, I don't know, maybe the Atlas just can't keep the ball on it. Maybe Pulver knocks it out a couple times. We get a little swing action. I don't know.
Caraway was one of the players who had a great start to the season. He struggled down the stretch. I don't know specifically how he did in that game. He didn't even dress last week. Now you got Chris Gray, and just the Atlas, the ball doesn't stay in their stick long enough for teams to even really force turnovers. So I don't know. That's just my read on this game. So like I said, I have the Atlas -2.5. I have the over. You could count these as plays. I took a Lyle future MVP. So that's one that's on the Cannon side that I took, and then I took an Atlas championship future +450, I believe, still on Caesars. That's the best you can get it. I don't think it's going to get any more valuable than that. I think they're gonna, if they win this week, they'll be lucky if you find anything in the +400 range. So those are my 4 bets. I have a third. That's my best bet. We'll get that a little bit later, but that's what I'm taking in this Atlas Cannons game.
Hey, we'll root for points because I have the over too. Because they're averaging 25 points in every single game they play. So
that's a rare over from my man Parker Blake right there, sliding in the little over as he's heading on out. We also got to do a little backtracking here. We got Chaos taking on Archers. I think this is a really interesting game just because of the struggle the Archers had. I think also maybe how good Chaos looked. I know that they lose the game, but they do end up covering the spread there. This spread 1.5 for Archers total. This is the lowest total that there has ever been in an Archers game. 22.5. The lowest previously was 23.5. And they're a team that, kind of trends towards the over. Maybe that changes with Grant Amon, but the problem for them is they're shooting, the net that they're shooting into is the one that Blaze Reardon is standing in. So that's usually the ceremonial low total whenever Blaze Reardon is in net. You just look, okay, what's the Chaos game? Okay, lowest total of the week. But this one's sitting at 22.5. I lean towards that under, but with this Archers team, whenever I see a low total with them, even without Grant Amon, it always makes me a little bit sick. And then as far as just the spread goes, Parker was breaking down, how good dogs have been. Well, one team that isn't good, no matter what points you give them, unless it's 2.5, is Chaos. Or excuse me, this was stat that I actually had for the Chrome. I'm mixing up my games here. The stat I wanted to throw in earlier was Chrome 0-7 against the spread when they're not getting 2.5, 3-0 when they were getting 2.5. So that's a little post point on that Chrome game. But in this Chaos Archers game, I think the under is probably the best way to attack it. I maybe lean Archers just how bad they looked in week 1. But how are you attacking this one, Hutton? In this Chaos Archers game, is there anything actionable for you in this one?
No, I'm not going to put anything on here. I would lean under too, just because of the presence of Blaze. And these games have historically been low scoring. And I think, we saw the Chaos were able to neutralize the Archers offense last year when they were at full strength. And when the Chaos defense, in my opinion, was a little bit worse. Now, the Chaos defense is much more improved with the presence of Brett Kennedy, Zach Geddes. They looked great on Saturday against the Whips. Offense leaves a little bit to be desired, which also kind of plays into the under. I do think the Archers are due for some positive offensive regression. They really weren't finishing a lot of plays against the Chrome. Tom Schreiber only had 1 point, but he had, I think, 11 assist opportunities. And I think I forget what the stat was, but they just weren't finishing a lot of their plays. So I think the Archers could be due for a bigger game, but this isn't the spot that I want to back that against this Chaos defense that looked so good. So I would lean under 22.5, just given that presence of the Chaos defense is stronger and their weakness is on offense as well. I think they can keep it close by keeping it low scoring, and I think this offense is going to struggle to put up points against this Archers defense. But overall, yeah, I'm not playing a side or a total on this one.
I feel like, Parker, you probably have the strongest opinion out of the three of us on this one. So I'll let you give the final words on this Chaos Archers game, because it's one that I think is super interesting. I just don't know if there's enough. I would like to back the Archers on the money line, but I think it's sitting at like minus 170 or something like that right now. That's just too much juice to lay with how bad they looked in week one.
No, I totally agree. I think overall the juice this week was just ridiculous. Like, nothing even looks worth playing half the time. But I will say the Chaos game this week is probably my favorite game. And just to keep it quick, I will say they're sitting pretty nice covering the spread 69% of the time. They hit the under right around 70% of the time. And I think my favorite bet in the entire league every season so far is the Chaos plus 1.5, because they just cover like a monster. But you got Blaze in the net, and their totals are around 23, so right above it. It might get a little sweaty, but I'm taking the under with Blaze every single time.
So I think we're all looking towards that under. It's low, and maybe it's low for a reason. 22.5, a couple leans in an official play from my guy, Parker Blake, right there. Also looking towards the dog. Shocker. It's a big shocker right there. Last game that we have before we get you some best bets in the best bet segment, I actually was able to find one. And just like Parker said, I mean, this was the week of the juice. Like, it's return of the juice. I don't know how you want to, the juice is loose. However you want to say it, it's a damn tough week if you're a juice-adverse bettor like most of us here at Bet On Lacrosse. Whips are 1.5-point favorites in this one. Total 23.5. I get it that the Whips won last week, but they won by the skin of their teeth, guys. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like I was overly impressed with the Whip Snakes. If anything, I was overwhelmingly underwhelmed by what we saw from the Whip Snakes, especially, sure, okay, you're missing Zed Williams, but the Chaos are missing all their horses. You know what I mean? Like, I had buddies who looked at the Chaos roster and they were just like, who are some of these guys? And they gave the Whips all that they could handle. I think you're starting to see, I think that in a microcosm, what we saw between Chaos and Whips, just in a vacuum, what it was the parity of the league really showing itself, because this is a Chaos team that just won the championship last year that was missing so many of their horses, and it was still a 1-goal game. They cover, they took it down to the wire, and then, Uncle Channy comes in and then sends everybody home packing. So I lean the Water Dogs in this game because of how bad they looked and how underwhelming the Whips looked. As far as all of my leans, I think this is the one that I think I could actually get home because I'm getting the 1.5. It's a little bit juiced for me right now, so I'm hoping people sweep in on the Whips on game day so I can get a better price. I would also sprinkle a little bit on the money line on the Water Dogs. I was not impressed with the Whips, and I also really like buying low on teams. And with what we saw last week from the Water Dogs losing outright, this is a really good buy low spot. So, Parker, how are you looking in this game? I'm guessing, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm guessing you're looking towards the underdog.
I mean, I do love an underdog, but I got to say this was totally not from me, purely from the simulation I ran through the machine. But it actually really, it's probably my best play of the week from just the machine. But it's 66% chance that the 1.5 hits. I think you made a lot of great points. The Water Dogs love to cover. They love being the underdog. So I got to sit with the machine. I got to sit with the trend. We're going the dog plus 1.5. Love the Water Dogs.
Boom. That's a succinct handicap right there, Hutton. Anything that's getting money out of your pocket in this one? Because I know you probably, like me, I'm really looking forward to this game because I think we're going to learn a lot about these two teams in this matchup because it's only week 2, but it's kind of a get-right spot for both of them. You know what I mean, so to speak?
Yeah, I agree. So that's why I'm going to just sit back and watch. The only thing I could maybe tempt me to play is the under in this game, just because I thought both defenses are, top of the league when they're on their game. Water Dogs didn't look great last week, but kind of they brought it together. Both defenses started out slow and kind of dialed it in. What worries me is you don't have Dylan Ward in cage for the Water Dogs again. So DeLuca just didn't look great to me. That kind of worries me for, taking this total. You also have a lot of weapons on both sides. If the over still hit in a game with the Water Dogs over 24.5, despite them looking awful for a whole first half, it's kind of tough to talk me into betting an under after, they had a terrible first half and still managed to help push that over. And, you credit to the Cannons too, who put up 16 points, but I'd probably lean under 23.5 if I had to. But again, I mentioned Stephen Napoli out. For this Water Dogs defense, like, you're only as good as your worst defender. In these top three polls, these starting defenders for the Water Dogs are as good as a defense you could put together, but they really don't have a true number one choice for defensive midi. And I think the Whip Snakes could have exposed that. And but then the Whip Snakes on the other side, they don't have Zed Williams. And we saw last year the Water Dogs kind of rolled them without Zed Williams when he was injured last year. So you could see, I think Bernler wasn't at the top of his game last game, but I don't know. It's too much. I just made a case for both sides like 3 times there. So that's why I'm staying off. Maybe consider the under 23.5, but it's a complete pass for me for this game.
Yeah, when you flip-flop like 3 times, that's when just like, don't put your money on it. You know what I mean? Like, so like save yourself the heartbreak, because all you're going to do is be pissed off that you didn't listen to whether it was the devil on your shoulder that was telling you whips or it was the angel on your shoulder that was telling you Water Dogs. You're going to be pissed off at one of them. So just stay away from the game when you're flip-flopping like that. I think actually this is trending towards being a play for me. I think I am going to take the 1.5 if that juice comes down on the Water Dogs. And guys, let's get into our best bets right here. As we just recapped the entire PLL slate there for you. Hopefully you got some actionable info out of that. We have some best bets coming up. But first, I just want to let people know, head on over to the PLL YouTube page. You can check out my new show. Episode 2 just dropped with Devin Caney from ESPN, sideline reporter with NLL, also with NBC Sports Philadelphia. She's a host with Superbook Sports. Recorded a great episode with her, about 20 minutes of gold. You can find it on the PLL YouTube page. You can also find it at PLL Bet on Twitter, at PLL Bets on Instagram. Somebody got to that handle first on Twitter, that at PLL Bet, and it's just sitting there. Rabel's smart enough to say, we're not paying you any fucking money for that thing. What are you trying to extort me for PLL Bets handle? Get the hell out of here. So you can find that. Of course, you can follow me at Newbie Talks. You can follow these great guys as well. Best bet time. It's been a while since I heard of Parker Blake best bet, so I want to get that one right out of the way, because Hutton and I have 2 player props that we may just even be parlaying together if we can talk ourselves into it. PB, the floor is yours. Best bet time.
No, I mean, I really want to get involved with these player props. I don't know if it's because I'm not very familiar with the game or it's just too volatile. I love looking at a couple of the woods just so I can get some action on the game, at player props, but I don't think I can go away from the under from the chaos. I really can't. That's my best pick of the week, and I'm going to stick to it, man.
Nice and simple right there. Going towards the chaos in this one, getting the 1.5 as they take on the Archers. I'll go first because I want to hear what your player prop is. I just hate the juice, and Hutton and I were trying to come up with like a cute name if we parlayed our 2 picks together. We found no common threads to really make like a fun like screenshot name, but I came up with it, Hutton. We're calling it the FTJ parlay, the fuck the juice parlay, because I'm going Jules Hennenberg over 2.5 points at a -150. Like, FU line through and through. This guy's coming off a 4-point performance, and now you're missing some pieces for the Woods. And I get it, some of them are defensive pieces, but one of them's Perkovich, who they always rely on for, a deep bomb so maybe they're going to look for some scoring elsewhere. Not saying Henningberg's going to go behind the arc. That's not his game at all, but he just came off a 4-point performance, and I just wanted to see what he meant to this team and what he's meant as a professional since leaving Rutgers. Last year, he only played in 9 games. He averaged 2.2 points per game, so a little bit light there. But again, there's some pieces that are going to be out, and we only needed 3 points of them out of here to this weekend. He didn't play in the bubble. Again, he plays for the Redwoods. The year prior, though, 33 points in 10 games. I understand they've added some pieces. Pennell kind of took a little bit of his scoring away as well, but 33 points in 10 games. And then when he also played prior for Florida, 25 points in 8 games. So he is a sneaky good pro, and they're putting this line up because it might be a little bit of a bait job after what happened last week. I think it's worth laying that minus 150. So I'm going to take him to have another strong week. Give me Jules Henenberg over the 2.5. And I think I might just parlay that together for a little FTJ parlay with what Hutton's got for his best bet this week.
Yeah, I love that. I'm getting in on that as well. I think I kind of missed that because it was minus 150, and I was probably just scrolling and just didn't notice. I'm very juice adverse, so that's probably why. But I love this play. And let's not forget, Jules' coming out party for the Redwoods in 2019, where he had, I think, 5 goals, 3 assists. That was against the Chrome. Again, 2019. Few years ago, but I do like this play a lot. I think he's going to have to come up big for this team, especially if Pennell's not completely healthy, and especially too if this team is to win against this stout Chrome defense. He's going to have a big game, and I like him. And he's another guy, like, even though Brad Smith didn't get home for us last week, he can score goals around the crease in a variety of different ways. He can also feed and assist. So he can do a lot of different things. So that's the nice thing about when you're betting points is you're not just relying on him to get 3 goals. You're not just relying for him to get, 3 apples either. He can kind of, mix and match there. So I like this a lot, even at minus 150. And the second leg of our parlay is going to be Eric Law over 3.5. It was minus 110. I think it's now minus 120. Kind of looking in the history again with Eric Law. So he's only had 4 games in the past 12 games where he scored 4 or more points. So, kind of a small sample size there. But his last week was 7 goals. And I think you're seeing how much of a benefit he's getting from playing with Gray and Teat. And then last year, his last 7-point game against the Cannons in the playoffs. So I don't think this Cannons defense is much more improved than they were last year. I think this offense is much better. Teat and Gray are going to draw a lot of attention on this offense. It's going to leave Eric Law around the crease wide open for a lot of plays. He had some assists last week as well. So, especially since it's such low juice, I think it's a very benefit of playing over 3.5, and then, do a little bit of sprinkle in that parlay for us as well. So that's my best bet. Eric Law over 3.5 points.
FTJ. So, yeah, we're going. And again, we're not like big parlay guys. They're typically negative EV plays. But if you do put those 2 plays together, it's a plus 205 take back. So you have a couple extra bucks in your bankroll. Might be worth a sprinkle. I can tell you, I'm personally doing it. Give me Jules Henenberg over the 2.5 points. Give me Eric Law over co-signing his pick, Hutton Jackson, 3.5 points. You take that 110. You take that minus 150. Turn it into a beautiful 205 sandwich. And if you want to just make it a BOL parlay, I won't stop you. You're already betting a parlay. Why not just throw in an extra leg? Screw it at this point. Throw in the plus 1.5. That's the best bet for my guy Parker Blake. That's chaos getting the 1.5. So that's our best bets. That's our thoughts on the slate. Hop in. Let us know what you think. You can always get us on Twitter at Bet On Lacrosse. You can also see us at Pro Lacrosse Bets. That's where we drop our best bets. It was a rough week last week. Hutton saved us all. It's a bounce back week here for the boys on Pro Lacrosse Talk. For my guy Parker Blake, for my guy Hutton Jackson, for Brian Andrews, for Justin Byers, I'm Dan Alexander, and we will talk to you next week with some extra money in our pocket. FTJ. We'll talk to you next week.